Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily here, and I am so excited today to be joined by actor, producer, you've done it all, Terry, it seems, Terry Bird, who is here to help promote his latest film, Sweeney Todd Slice and Dice, will be coming to theaters June 2nd in the UK. You're also the founder of Newtown Films, which produced the film as well, Terry. So just want to say first, congrats on the film, and thank you for spending some time with me.
It's a pleasure. Nice to meet you guys.
Oh, it's a pleasure's all on our end, Terry, and I know you've got a bunch of these to do today, so I'm gonna hopefully ask you some questions you don't get asked too often,
Okay.
keep things interesting. But the first one, maybe a bit of a boilerplate one, which is just more when you think about the story of Sweeney Todd, what personally does it, or how does it resonate with you personally?
I think the Sweeney Todd story is interesting to me as a kind of creative because you can give these kind of characters your own spin. So the audience, most people have heard of the character Sweeney Todd. They know he was a guy, a barber who killed people. But that's kind of about it, really. So that gives you plenty of opportunity to develop a character and a story and kind of make it your own and give it your own spin.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right in that there have been a few adaptations of the Sweeney Todd story over the years, but I think if you were to ask some random folks on the street, they wouldn't be able to tell you much more than, yeah, I think it's a barber that killed people, but that's about it. And, I think what's so interesting about what you've done in Slice and Dice is that you've turned an already somewhat sympathetic character even to a far more sympathetic one. And
Okay.
I'm curious to know what inspired the changes to the kind of core narrative to make him a little bit less of the antagonist, maybe more of the anti-hero.
Oh, well, thank you for those observations. I mean, so I've never actually seen Sweeney Todd. Obviously, I know, yeah, it's mostly known as a musical.
Right.
Um, it's been on loads Broadway and the West End and all over the world. And of course, Johnny Depp played Sweeney Todd, and that was a musical version as well. There haven't been that many dramatized versions of it. There was one in like the early 1920s or something like that, and then there was one uh, another dramatization of it with Ray Winston playing Sweeney Todd in about 20 years ago. Um, so I, you can kind of use that kind of character to get across points of interest and things that you're kind of passionate about or issues that you want to flag, I think, you know. And I just wanted to play him really as a kind of a normal man who's had these kind of had a bit of a rough ride when he was
Just a
coming
little
up.
bit.
Yeah, coming up as a child, and he's tried to deal with things the best that he can, but his kind of mental health has just gets the better of him, and that's what that twists and turns him. But really, he's after love, He's
Yeah.
after family, That's what it's all about for him.
Yeah, I think that's what shines through the most is that, when we look at the stage versions of him particularly, it's very much about this kind of, injustice, almost a Count of Monte Cristo, but a far more bloody version of it.
Yeah.
Um, and in this one, we do get a little bit more depth into not just himself, but Miss Lovett, and the Tobias relationship has changed quite a bit. And so I think for folks that have, even if you are unfamiliar or very familiar with the core material, I think there's a new interpretation here that a lot of folks will get quite a bit out of. And
Oh,
I know
cool.
that this was a special production for you as it was something that you dedicated to your late friend Darren Kent. And I'm curious if you could just speak more a little about yours and Darren's relationship and why this film was such a good kind of milestone or touchstone for him in his remembrance.
Yeah, so Darren was a very good friend of mine. He was an actor, writer, producer, kind of. and had loads of acting roles himself. He was in Games of Thrones and been in most British TV shows. And he lived not far from me, so we used to meet up all the time. And making a film is quite a isolating business, especially when you're in development, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so you need those kind of supportive voices and people who encourage you rather than all the time kind of saying, why are you doing this?
Beat you down. Yeah.
Yeah, why? Why, you know? And, you know, because very quickly you can find yourself in a swamp drowning. And, yeah, you need someone to lift you up. And Darren, I've never met anyone with so much motivation in all my life. I've got quite a lot of motivation, but he kind of, yeah, was full of it and enthusiasm, and yeah, it was partly that pushed me on, you know. And a lot of my friends were kind of not really in the industry, were not really working at the time, you know. Everyone from cameramen to editors, you know, and they all wanted to do something, you know, because us creatives do, we like to try and be creative. And you know, when you make films and stuff, it's a bit difficult. It's a bit different to being an artist, for example, you know, where on
Yeah.
your own you can paint a picture, but with a film or a piece of theatre, you need collaboration and you need a team of people, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Darren kind of kick-started all that for us.
That's amazing. And I think it's such a loving tribute to have, not just that memory, but also to be able to use it as a means to bring work to the UK and particularly in the film production business. Because, and hopefully there's more of it coming. I think with the recent news of the United States, maybe more places will be going elsewhere to film, so that maybe that'll bring a nice infusion over to Europe. But I think you're spot on about the idea that it's so easy to have to be surrounded by people who are going to try and doubt you or bring you down. That when you find those uplifting individuals who can really push you and motivate you in kind,
Yeah,
um, it's
and
rare.
you still do really, because like when obviously when a film's released as well, and that how the nature and the way that films are critiqued nowadays as well, you know, that can be pretty ruthless as
Yeah.
well, you know. So I think that's you know, you need support around you to navigate that, you know, because otherwise, as an artist, you end up doing you won't produce any work because there's so many things within yourself that stop yourself from producing work. You know, it doesn't take a lot for someone to go, "Oh, your film is rubbish.
Yeah.
It's the worst film ever made. Why did you make it?" You know, and yeah, but
And you need less choruses of those voices and more people in saying, regardless, I think people don't account for the fact that making a film is is making a miracle, and that it requires so many different people and pieces to fall into a particular place. And, no one goes into it saying we're going to make the worst movie ever, right? I think
no,
it's a matter of sometimes the circumstance, the situations tend to breed issues and situations. So I think that, again, you're right. The internet can be a treacherous place, but it's also a place where you can meet, like-minded folks and get that support. And I'm glad that you had someone like Darren in your life there because it can
thank you.
help mitigate so much of that outside, in the internet in the online world. And you've had an impressive career that's kind of been both in front of the camera as well as on stage, but also doing quite a bit behind the scenes on the production side. Do you have a preference? You seem to be doing a bit of both these days, but is there one area where you tend to find yourself pulling more towards than the other?
Um, it's always an awkward question because I think it depends where you are in your life at the time and the project.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
Yeah, so it's like sometimes if you've been through something like a film, you know, the development it and the post-production and delivering it, which we've just done with this film, you know, you're not really thinking about initially making another film again that quick, you know?
Yeah, unless you're a bit of a masochist, right?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously I'm always, you know, kicking around ideas, looking at scripts, talking to people, but it's not like, yeah, I'm not in a major rush to all of a sudden make another film. So that's when the acting side of things can become quite relaxing, because you land a job for a couple of days as an actor, and you get picked up, you get looked after, you go on, you do your few lines, you come off, you get driven home, and it's like, oh, okay, that was all right. That was, you get paid. Um, but then if you have too much of that, well, you kind of start getting a little bit, bored while you're waiting to do your next take. So that's when you're then texting your mates and going, shall we talk about that idea that you had to make a film? And, you know, so it's the yin and the yang.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, given how much work and, sweat equity goes into making a film, it's not something that is as conducive to wanting to kind of jump right into it, especially in independent productions where you're often wearing multiple hats and you're doing
Yeah,
many
yeah,
things. So it is nice to kind of be taken care of a little bit as, the actor and have to be able to show up, read your lines, do your
yeah,
time, move on, whereas production is obviously a far more involved and longer term endeavor. So I could
yeah.
definitely see the idea of wanting to be able to do both and being able to stretch into one when the other is maybe not filling the cup as much. And
Yeah, that's right. And theatre is obviously that's kind of one of my passions as well. I think that's how most UK actors come up through
yeah,
theatre. And so I'm doing a bit of theatre at the moment, and that's really nice as well because that's instantaneous. That so you're performing, and the audience, you can feel the audience breathe and laughing and sighing, or it's an instant response. Where, as you know yourself with film, you're waiting for a year for it to come out, and then you never
correct.
really see what the audience think about it.
Yeah,
Really.
you're not in it's in a, you have the ability to check out of it a little bit. Whereas when
Exactly.
the live performance, you're in it. And that's part of the high risk, high reward of it all is that live interaction can really drive a lot of, energy, but at the same time, it's also something that you rely on almost as a creator and a performer. And my last question for you, Terry, is a bit of a fun one. If you were programming a double feature with Sweeney Todd Slice and Dice, and there was another film you were able to pick as either a front end or the back end of it, what film do you think would be a nice pairing?
Well, in terms of kind of story or tone, or just another.
However you want to take it, I guess, because it's some double features or things around theme, more of a theme. Others more just here's two examples of the same thing. So I'm always curious to hear how folks think about
Wow, wow,
a
yeah.
double feature.
Um, Probably something will come to me.
It'll come to you
But
late in the middle of the morning, 2:30 in the
yeah,
morning. You're gonna get this brilliant idea.
I'll email you. Yeah, but I mean, immediately I'm thinking, I don't know why, Shawshank Redemption, but
Yeah,
that's not, it's not Victorian, it's not, but some elements of that,
it
um,
does have a nice story of retribution that kind of goes in hand with, the
yeah,
Sweeney Todd story.
yeah, and then obviously you've got obvious ones, a bit more cliched, like Death Wish, like the original Charles Bronson ones, those kind of films,
That's
Rambo.
an interesting juxtaposition of like the times of like, the gritty 70s,
That's
and the
it.
Victorian era,
Yeah,
right
yeah.
along. So I'd watch that double feature in a heartbeat.
Yeah, so would I.
Maybe if you throw in Death Wish 2 to make it a triple feature, we'll go bookend it with Bronson and put Sweeney Todd in the middle.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean I love those films when I was growing up, First Blood, even though that's
Oh
very,
yeah.
Rambo is very different, but again, that's kind of, he just seems like he's a normal man, doesn't he? And then he's provoked and provoked, and then unleashes hell, So it's
A sympathetic character as well. He didn't
yes,
want to do what he
didn't
ended
want
up
to do it.
doing, but
Yeah.
when the right ingredients are there to push an individual over the edge, what happens is anyone's guess.
Yeah, and is that not the same for all of us, do you think, in
I
life?
think to some extent that's what makes Sweeney Todd a very human character is that even though what he goes through and does is a very exaggerated and kind of entertaining way of putting it forward, it's also
Yes.
very much about, people do have a limit, and when pushed, people will break. And if people break, society has to deal with the repercussions of not caring for the individual. So
Yeah.
it's it's definitely there. And Terry, I just want to say thank you once again for taking some time to chat about the film and remind everyone watching this that they'll be able to catch Sweeney Todd Slice and Dice in theaters and on digital on demand in the UK on June 2nd. And Terry, looking forward to whatever you're working on next, and wish you the best of luck with this release and those coming forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Cheers.